Hello, everyone. I'm Will Allred. If you are watching this, you probably know who I am. But if you follow me online, you also probably know who I'm with, Kyle Coleman. Kyle, mind doing a quick introduction of yourself? I don't know if it's totally necessary, given if you followed me for cold email advice. Like, I literally learn my entire content strategy from watching what you do on a daily basis. But I think it would be great just give a quick intro.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. And thanks for the flattering words. My name's Kyle. I'm the SVP of Marketing at Clari. I started in tech about 10 years ago. I was the sixth employee and first SDR at a company called Looker, a business intelligence company based in Santa Cruz. Over the course of 6 years, grew the SDR team from me to about 65 people globally. Looker itself went from 100K in ARR to about 100 million in ARR, and then was acquired by Google in 2019 for $2.5 billion. And the thing I'm most proud of that run, that 6-year run, is that about 40% of the revenue that Looker got was outbound sourced from the SDR team. So big believer in all things outbound. In 2019, I jumped over to Clari to lead both SDR and enablement, ended up taking over the top of funnel, ended up taking over customer marketing, product marketing, and now I lead all of the marketing function inclusive of SDR and enablement.
So, a question for you. Do the SDRs roll into the marketing department?
Oh, funny you should ask. I report directly to our CRO and I have a dotted line to our CEO. So you tell me. I mean, it's so funny because there's a lot of these debates, quote unquote, in the space about how best to structure your organization. And frankly, a lot of it doesn't matter. And I really just don't think it matters that much. What matters is the way that the SDR team is treated, the relationships that they build, and the way that they're compensated. If they are treated like strategic partners to the sales team and to the marketing team, that's a good thing. If they have that working relationship with AEs where they're respected and they're doing that work and they're compensated, SDRs are compensated on quality and not just quantity, then it's going to work out. If you can treat them as respected people, you can incentivize them against metrics that the sales team actually cares about, then the reporting structure doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think the one piece of feedback people give when it comes to the reporting structure is career pathing, which you write about your career path quite a bit. I'm curious, do y'all see a typical progression within Clari?
It depends what you mean by typical, I suppose. There's a plurality of people that move from the SDR role into an AE role, but it's not the majority. I would say about third, maybe 40% of our SDR graduates have moved into sales. The other 2/3 have gone into marketing, inclusive of operations and field marketing and content marketing. They've gone into deal desk and sales operations. They've gone into management. They've gone into SE. We just had somebody move into a sales engineering role. So the growth paths abound. And maybe this is too, well, I'll just say it anyway. When I was out early in career in tech and just out of college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. No idea. You can't look me in the eye and tell me that any 21, 22-year-old, which is the majority of the people we have in starting in the SDR ranks, you can't tell me they actually know what they want to do long term. And so saying that every SDR has to become a thing, a salesperson or whatever, it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm so much more inclined to say this person is earlier in their career, whether they're new to tech or whether they just graduated college or high school, or whatever. And in all likelihood, they're going to gravitate toward different things. And we need to treat them like an individual who is likely to have different interests. And if we know what motivates them intrinsically, if we know what is fulfilling to them at work, we can design an intentional, tailored career path for them at this company that will retain them long-term and not just move them out of the SDR work because that's what success is. That's not what success is. Success is graduating them from the SDR work and then retaining them at the company for years and years and years. And the best way to do that is to actually provide an intentional, individualized growth plan for every single person on the team.
One of the things I've just picked up from following along with you is you're ahead of the curve, right? Like personalization is now all the quote rage. You've been doing it since the get-go. So this idea of career mapping for individuals. Curious, do y'all use any tech tools to help with that? Is there a process that y'all come up with?
It's funny you ask, Will, because a lot of people, they make excuses that they can't do this because they don't have some sort of solution for it. They don't have whatever software would make this easy. We use Google Docs. It's free.
That's crazy.
Isn't that wild? I know. And it just requires effort. It requires your managers to actually care. It requires your people to actually put in the work. And what our managers do, and this is, advice for any any person, any in a work context, is our managers provide written expectations for every single one of their direct reports. Here is what I expect of you. And then one of those expectations is do the same for me. So then the direct report back up to the manager says, here's what I need from you in writing, black and white. And they develop a really close relationship because there's mutual accountability on delivering what they need. And that creates the framework then for a career plan that is in writing, that's co-authored between the two of them, that's understood at a bunch of different levels, not just between the rep and the manager, but also the other hiring managers across the org. So I can go to the head of content marketing. I can say, Michael, this person interested in content marketing, look at all of the things that they've done and documented. So it's an intentional thing. It requires work and it requires effort, because anything in life that actually is valuable requires work and effort. So don't make excuses, like just put pen to paper and start designing this intentionally.
One of the things that has always sort of stood out in my career, I've always had this mentality of like turned it into an acronym at this point, but FIO, figure it out. It's wild to me how many folks don't have that. Just if you want something to happen, you just have to go get it done. So that's really cool. So this is quickly becoming a masterclass on how to organize and design your revenue engine. So I'm loving this, the direction this is going. Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me was this idea of people don't necessarily at that point in their career typically don't know where they want to become and where they want to go. You had mentioned in an earlier conversation some commentary about how in-depth y'all's onboarding is. Mm-hmm. Is that with the understanding that the ladder that they're going to climb up, quote unquote, or as you would say in your was it the jungle gym?
The rock wall.
The rock wall. The rock wall. You're from Denver. This makes sense. The rock wall. I'm curious, like, how would you describe your SDR onboarding, and how does that tie in with that understanding of they have no idea where they're going to be?
Comprehensive is the word, and comprehensive not just of how to do the SDR job well, but how to be a good employee at the company. And it's especially important now if you're in a virtual environment, that from the onset, you're training your new employees how to work well in a virtual environment, which is to say, don't be afraid to ask questions, via Slack, on the phone, whatever. And don't be afraid. And in fact, reach out across the aisle to people that you otherwise would not speak to, because there is not a forum for it in a virtual world. Go and reach out to people on the marketing team, the product team, the engineering team, the sales team. Go develop relationships with them. Just figure out what they do. Ask them about their day-to-day. That is valuable. So it's comprehensive in its exposure, I would say. Exposure to, of course, SDR best practices, our sales process, all the basic things, but also, as I mentioned before, to our product, and then to the people you work with. And this is SDR trait, this mindset that I think is the most important if you want to be successful in this role. And I think this is true of sales in general, maybe just any world, is curiosity. And if you are curious about all those things I just mentioned, our processes, our product, and our people, these all start with P's evidently, then you're going to be successful in this world. And you have to take it, the onus is on you, especially again, in this virtual environment. I'm not going to go and set up a 15-minute call for you and an engineering manager. I'm not going to do it. You have to go do it yourself. The permission is there. Go do it. And it's a major part of our onboarding process. And some people will say, oh, they spent 5 hours this week just chatting with other people across the org. I'm like, yeah, that is a good use of time. Like, well, they could have spent that time hands on keyboard or practicing objection handling or all that. I'm like, the relationships that they're building, the understanding of the business that they are building, it trumps the other stuff. The other stuff we'll be able to figure out in other forums. But if they don't feel like they have that, again, permission to go and be, quote unquote, more than an SDR, then they're only going to be narrowly focused on how to do their literal job well. And that's not all their job is. Their job is to be a good Clarion, not just to be a good SDR. And so we try and design that intentionally.
Let's go. I mean, one of the things that I've always been super keen on is you just have to have good business acumen across the entire organization. And so teaching them through just natural human experience, you sort of capture both sides of the coin of like, you end up training them really good business acumen, but at the same time, you create good culture as a byproduct.
That's right. That's right. And then the learning never stops, Will. And this is something that I think a lot of companies get wrong is like, okay, that person, they're done with their onboarding, so we don't have to teach them anything anymore. And that's obviously not true. And there's always honing for anybody, your top performing people, your low performing people, there's always things that you can nitpick or change the fundamentals on. And the same is true with career pathing. Career pathing, the way that I think about it is that for somebody to move inside the organization, there's two things that need to happen. One is they need to be ready. So one of the circles here is their readiness to move. The other circle in the Venn diagram is the company need. And it's not until those two circles overlap that somebody can actually move. You could be ready to move right now, but if the company doesn't have an open role for you, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to make a move right now. So you need to exercise patience. And so what we try and make sure of is we try and make sure everybody on the team who is ready or near that point of readiness on their own is aware of what is happening or coming down the pike or likely to become available from a departmental standpoint. What marketing roles are open, what SE roles are open, what operations, what's happening here. And then we go and work with hiring managers to design many what we call 10% projects. This is a project that'll take 10% of this potential candidate's time to go and explore and say, hey, is that something that you like? And we've done this, God, I don't even know how many times, but we've had people say, I'm interested in finding out what enablement is, and I think I'd be good at it. And we're like, great, yeah, you've shown a propensity for this. You've trained people on the team. You've helped other new hires get onboarded. So enablement seems like it'd be right up your alley. They go and they do this 10% project and they come back and they're like, that was not what I thought it was. Thanks, but no thanks. And we're like, great. Yeah. It's way, way better that you found that out before you took a full-time role in a thing that you don't like. Yeah. So we see these projects go well, we see them not go well, but all of them are valuable. And again, it just takes intent, and it's harder for your managers to do because it puts more on them, but it's well worth it.
Yeah, I love that. And similar back to your point on accountability plans, is that's just like managed through one-on-ones through Google Docs, like here's going to be your 10% plan?
Yeah, exactly. It's the 10% plan is co-authored by the manager, we call it RevDev, revenue development, RevDev manager, and the hiring manager on the other team. They put together kind of the bullet point list of what they're spending time on, success criteria and all that, and then present that back to the rep, and the rep goes and executes against it.
Okay, I feel like we could dig into this for a few hours, but like I think one of the things that I wanted to make sure we talked about was this, like you're clearly pioneering a lot of things within this space that a lot of managers aren't taking the time, putting the effort in to design or do. One of the things that you've clearly made a name for yourself online is this idea of personalization.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the team didn't always have lavender. And so I'm curious, how did you design a system for scaling personalization the way you did? Yeah, it's not every day that I come into chat within work. Every single rep is personalizing their cold emails. I'm like, this is great. We're already on a good start. How did you think about systematizing that? Like, what was the catalyst for even making that the imperative across the org?
Yeah, it's a great question, Will. It's the imperative for it. The impetus to scale our personalized approach was reading the tea leaves of what was happening back in 2015, 16 kind of timeframe with the automation tools, with the outreaches and sales offs of the world. When I saw those coming up to becoming more and more popular, I was like, oh no, this is not going to be good, because I had seen exactly how marketing automation emails were bastardized and those tools were used for spamming purposes. I was like, all we're going to be creating here with Outreach and Sales Loft and the like are a team of spam people. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a part of that. We don't want to just join the noise there. Now, of course, there's still a volume element to what we do. I'm not an idiot. I understand that somewhere between 5 and 15% of people are ready to buy at any given moment. So you have to play something of a numbers game. However, we saw more and more noise creeping into what we were doing. And that made us just double down even more on what was working for us, which was research, personalization, resonance, and really strong writing. I want to harp on this last point because I know it's something you and I, we've talked about in the past. Creating a team of really strong writers is fundamental to any team's success, and not just as an SDR, but I think you say it a lot, Will, and I totally agree. Clear writing is clear thinking. And if you can write clearly and you can demonstrate that you can think clearly, like one of the reasons that I'm able to articulate the way I am is because I've taken so much time writing. I've spent so much time writing well and being really thoughtful about how I'm phrasing things, how it sounds, how it feels, how it looks on a page. And that's very intentional. It translates across a million different things in the business. So writing has always been a fundamental part of what solid SDR work is for us, and getting people to flex that writing muscle. Research and personalization was the best way to do that. Like, how else am I going to make them flex that creative writing muscle? By writing email templates or by just clicking send? Probably not. So I've always thought that writing was super important. Therefore, it's always been an important part of our mix. And from the early days of SDR work, it was a great way to stick out. And it's become even more so as things have gotten noisier.
Well, and I think one of the things with that too, when I talk to individual contributors, is they hear this like clear writing, clear thinking. They hear like, you gotta write better. And they look at like stuff that we put out and they're like, I'm just not there. I don't know how to get there. And they like get discouraged. I think one of the things that I'm always keen to promote is it takes practice. Like you mentioned it a few times, I do a lot of writing, which is how I've gotten to a point where I can write the way I write. In the exact same way. Actually, I think back to like when I was in sales, I hated cold calling. And so like I practiced my writing all the time so that I could like not have to do as many calls and still hit my numbers. And it's like probably not the best thing to share. It's like, hey, if you get really good at writing, you can skip your cold calls. But hey, if you hit your numbers, nobody's going to be mad at you. Okay, one of the things that I think is really interesting though is how y'all figured out how. I think it's great that you put like an importance on it, but I'm curious, like what systems did you originally put in place to make that happen? Like we've talked about how Lavender is like helping, but I think it's interesting to hear like, how did you do it without us in the world?
Yeah, we cheated. And what I mean by this is there's people who think that every personalized email needs to be this special snowflake that's 0 to 1 written by the brand new. And I'm here to tell you that is not the case. People have common interests, believe it or not. A lot of people in America, for example, love football. And therefore, when we're doing research, if I'm an SDR and I find that somebody's a fan of any sort of football team, college or NFL or whatever, and I write an email about an effective football team has to do X, Y, and Z, and using Clari's platform, your team can do X, Y, and Z, whatever. That little snippet of how I transitioned from the research of football to the value prop of Clari, that becomes codified and shared in a little glossary that we have across the team. So next time I'm a rep, a different rep, and I'm looking through the glossary, or I've done my research. I'm like, oh, okay, this person likes football, and they went to this school, and their company has grown this much, and their strategic initiatives are this cool. Now I need to go write my email. I go to the glossary, I look for football, I see the snippet, I copy, I paste, and I send the email. And it's not rocket science. And some people would say, is that cheating? I personally don't believe it's cheating. I believe it is scaling. It's just like any other effective email. It's like any other email that didn't have the football thing in that was working, like we're going to want to use over and over again. It's the same thing here. So now we have a glossary of 100, 200, whatever, different little triggers with snippets that transition from research to value prop. And it streamlines the way that we're able to scale. And it's, like I said, not rocket science. It just takes intent. One other thing I'll say, and that's all just in a Google sheet, like it's not anything fancy. One other thing I'll say.
Is it codified into y'all are on Groove now? Is it codified as like a snippet within Groove, or is it just like they have it just like open on their Google Sheets and they just
Google Sheet is just the easiest to search and to maintain and to share across a whole org. And then you can use it in LinkedIn and all the rest. The other thing I'll say is that we have a specific channel for celebrating these emails. Not to say celebrating that they get responses, that's nice, but celebrating a good and a well-written email. We share that in a Slack channel. I'm going to check how many people are. There are 300 people in the Slack channel.
I love that.
And it's all the SDR team. It's all many of the AEs. It's a lot of the VPs. Myself obviously is in there. And so when somebody writes a solid email that they're proud of, again, response or no response, we share that in that channel. The managers take the little research snippet, they put it in the glossary, and it's this sort of systemization that helps these things scale. And it also celebrates the fact that we're doing real intentional strategic work here. We're not just clicking the send button. Anybody can do that. We have a team of people that think, and celebrating the way that they think and the way that they write is a really good way to show them it's something we value.
A team of people that think. I love that. I think one of the coolest parts about that is 300 people are in there. So you're celebrating a thing that you want to perpetuate throughout the organization. It's crazy how like few folks take that just extra step, recognizing like Sometimes just that public recognition is all people really need to
Makes a
do.
huge difference. It makes a
Yeah.
huge difference, and it inspires. And what's cool about it, Will, is that a lot of the folks who share the things are SDRs because they're the ones that are doing most of the work. But a lot of the recognition comes from your really tenured 20-year enterprise AE who's like, wow, this is awesome. I'm stealing this. And it's one thing to get kudos from me because I love this shit. I could celebrate it all day. It's a wholly different thing to get that same level of kudos from an enterprise sales VP who's seen it all in their career. So it's a really cool forum.
So this actually reminded me, and I'm now wondering if it's shown up within that Slack channel, but when y'all originally set up on Lavender, there were a couple of best practices that shined through, particularly around length. I remember having this discussion with Alex, and usually length is this like curve that's just like starts in the top left and then goes directly down to the bottom right. Y'all had this weird U graph, and I was like, what is going on? And I figured it out because one of your AEs figured out if there was a certain job posting, they would take the entire job posting and break it down line by line on like, you don't need to hire for that. And I thought that was like such a clever idea. It's like, of course that works.
It's that kind of stuff. When you give people the license and you set the expectation that they are here to be strategic thinkers and authors, that's the type of result you get. You get something that I would have never thought of. And if we're only training people on things that I've thought of, our team is not going to succeed. Like we are training people in a framework for how to think and how to act, but how they actually go and execute is entirely up to them. There's a lot of autonomy that we bake into this entire process. And you get the cool stuff like that. And the team evolves in a bottoms up way. The processes evolve in a bottoms up way. It's not me telling them how to, I haven't been sitting in an SDR seat for 8 years. Who am I to tell people how to do the job best today? I can provide some best practices and aggregate different knowledge that I have, but how the process evolves and how we change things, it comes from the people doing the work.
Yeah. What's interesting about that too is I feel like I need to add this caveat because I've posted on LinkedIn, I've posted publicly that like I'm not a huge fan of focusing in on the personal side of personalization. I'm a big fan of like the relevant side of personalization. But one of the big reasons I've preached that publicly is because systematizing the personal is really hard.
Yeah.
You actually have an approach that is systematized how you do that. If I know an email is written for me, I'm going to read it top to bottom. And so if you have a system, if you have an approach that allows you to scale that, of course I would support that. Of course I would support being more thoughtful. And my focus when I'm posting about these kind of things is just like, I want to make sure you're not like dying in the research. And so I'm like a huge fan of having process. Big piece of that ties back to your 5x5 methodology, which I remember we talked about that like early on when we were like first building Lavender. I was like, hey Kyle, let's see if we can personalize an email to you within 5 minutes. Okay, shifting gears a little bit. One of the things
before you do, Will, can I interrupt you real quick? I want to just to address this real quick and then we can move along. I think that there's a false dichotomy that people design or talk about between personalization and resonance or relevance, where they think about them as mutually exclusive ideas. And that is not the case, in my opinion. The personalization that you do has to bleed into resonance. Otherwise, what are you doing? It drives me crazy when I get emails that are like, hey, saw you're a corgi owner. Anyway, here's something completely unrelated about my product. I'm like, yes, I am a corgi owner.
Anyways.
Right, exactly. That anyways, like in transition, the personalization you do has to be relevant and it has to resonate with the persona that you're reaching out to in some form or fashion. So again, if I'm reaching out to, for example, a sales VP who likes football, and my little research snippet is, hey, you like the Buffalo Bills, great teams do blah, blah, blah. They did this in the season. Your sales team can be a great team by doing da, da, da. How you go from personalization to resonance. And that's what we preach. So anyway, just wanted to get on my high horse and dispel that little notion.
I appreciate that because like it ties back into how it's relevant for the role. Okay. Yes. Okay. One of the things that I'm like, I applaud you on, I think it's incredible, is the fact that you give feedback on just about every email that you get.
Yeah.
First off, how do you manage your inbox?
Well, so I started doing this as a kind of a COVID hobby because I'm a nerd and I found myself with a lot of extra time. And I was like, hey, I trained my team internally here. How hard could it be to actually respond to emails? And what's interesting about it, Will, is as soon as I started doing this, I ended up getting fewer and fewer emails because I got removed from these automated cadences that would just clog my inbox. So it was actually, in the long run, a bit of a time saver. But really, it was from an altruistic side where I feel bad for so many SDRs. And it's one of the reasons I became active on LinkedIn to begin with, is so many SDRs are undertrained and underdeveloped, or they get bad advice, or their expectations for what the role is are off, and they need to reset that. I was like, I do as much as I can one-to-many on LinkedIn, but I'll try and make an impact here one-to-one. And so that was the impetus for starting to do that. And it doesn't take a ton of time. It takes 30 seconds to give somebody thoughtful feedback. It's not like it's a huge part of my day. Now, that said, the way that I manage it is I mark all of my emails with a little label that I call email love. And I mark them all. And then I find pockets in the day or on the weekend where I go and respond to them all in batches. So it's not like it's something I'm doing instead of my quote unquote real work. It's something I do in my off time.
I've got a couple emails that I want you to give feedback on now.
Okay, let's do it.
So this first one, I actually got it and I've been holding on to it because I was like, oh, I'm talking to Kyle. I wonder what Kyle would say if feedback to this rep here. Madison, I appreciate you opting in for this. So company's called Cord. Here's the thing. The video basically says like, hey, I saw you were poking around on our site, looking at engineers. Yeah, wanted to make sure you got a better feel for how to use the software. It was a pretty good video. I'm happy to show it to you if you want to see it. Point is that I've never been to their website.
Oh.
I was like, this is a thoughtful note, but curious, like, one, how do you respond in a situation like this? Do you get these kind of things often?
I do get them relatively frequently. Is it because there's the other William?
So funny enough, I scrolled down. It says, is this meant for you? I sent it literally to Will.
That's funny.
I don't think he did. So I thought it was funny, like when you see stuff like that, say somebody sends you an email and the RE is on the front, even though it's not actually a reply. Like, what's your go-to mindset to help and give folks the feedback and training that they need as opposed to doing deceptive tactics?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the question, or sort of to start the decision tree here, is this a deceptive tactic? Yes or no? I don't know if this one from Madison qualifies as a deceptive tactic. It could be an honest mistake because there are a couple different, I don't know. So I guess my primary mode of thinking is benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and just assume you're moving fast and you're doing the best you can. I want to actually say a couple of things I like about this email, and then I'll answer your question. One thing I really like, one, video messaging is really effective and a lot of people don't use it. So incorporate video messaging into your emails whenever you can. Two, the way that they've structured the video message is really nice, where you have a little bit of an intro line and then you have the email. Some people just put the video right at the front and that's silly. So the structure and the way this email looks is really nice. Other deceptive tactics, to answer your question, the in front of the first email to make it seem like I've responded before, or saying that we've met, or saying that you talked to somebody on my team, or just doing anything that's not true is a non-starter for me. You should not ever do that. It's never acceptable. The best case scenario is you get a response, and then once they find out that you've lied to them, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think they're going to move forward with you? Of course not. We have enough of a bad reputation to get over as salespeople already. If you are doubling down on those negative stereotypes by being deceptive right from the jump in your outreach, you're not just doing yourself a disservice, you're doing the entire profession a disservice. So stop it. Stop it. That would be my overall reaction to that kind of thing.
Yes. Same. I like that. Yeah. And to your point on the way the video is framed, I don't know about you. Do people send you just like the no context, just video over LinkedIn?
Sometimes, yeah.
I'm not going to watch it.
No, there needs to be framing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, it has no context. I just see a wave. I'm like, I have no idea if this is going to be relevant. I will say, if the video thumbnail has like my website on the background and they're waving, I'm a little more inclined because it gives me something. But if that's just like a pet peeve of mine, it's like, give me at least the TLDL, like the too long didn't listen. Okay. So one other email that I wanted to get your follow-up feedback on. I've got a sequence here that was sent to me. So there's two notes here. So I'll start with the first one. I want you to just like give feedback on it.
My reaction to the first one is it has nothing to do with you, Will, or Lavender, and it is entirely to do with the company that they are selling. It even starts with their company's name. That is a huge no-no. It needs to be all about the recipient and not about the sender.
Yeah, I had the exact same thought. Hit like my mental spam filter. In fact, I didn't even like think about it as a potential example until they sent me the follow-up, because that just like me language just hit me, and I was like, no, just gone in my day. But the follow-up I thought was like bizarre enough that it caught my attention. And I was like, what is this series of emails that I'm getting from this person? Which starts with this apology. I'm curious. You post about this, which is like the idea of I'm just an SDR. What are your thoughts on reps apologizing at all?
I'm not a fan of the apology type framing because it is putting you in a position, you're unleveling the playfield for yourself, the playing field. You need to think of yourself and carry yourself with the confidence that you are just as important as this person that you're reaching out to, because you are. And if you are apologizing, if you're hat in hand, if you, like some people think it's polite, I think that it just makes you sound a little desperate. And you don't want to sound that way. You want to portray confidence, as you should. And if you truly believe that your product is going to deliver these kinds of results, you have a lot to be proud of. So you're not bothering somebody. You can legitimately help them, and you need to frame your emails in that way and focus on how you can help them specifically.
I love that. Okay, so you have like 5 more minutes?
I have 40 seconds.
Okay, I rewrote these emails and I want to see what you think. So first one, I took an approach that I'm curious to see your thoughts on, because one of the things you mentioned was people aren't typically buying. And so I wanted to take an approach with the ask that is in alignment with where they're at. I'm curious what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, first of all, I really like this reframe here where you're teeing things up by this macro trend that is definitely going to be top of mind for people. So really important that you've done that. The call to action is an interesting one. I almost am always inclined to ask if they're interested or curious to understand how or to see more. I don't necessarily always like the closed-ended questions, because I could respond to this with a yes or no, or I could not respond at all. I prefer to ask the kind of interest or curiosity-based calls to action that are more open-ended.
Yep.
But I don't have any real data on that. Like, I don't hate it. I don't know. It seems like it could lead to a no a little bit too easily.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you say that, because like one of my thoughts with this is like, if we're not ramping up travel, then we're not a qualified buyer. So it's
That's a fair point.
an easy disqualifier. And then my other thought with it is like, so much of our messaging is like, hey, is this a priority right now? Is this a priority right now?
Yeah.
So this is more of, hey, are my assumptions correct?
I like that, Will. Actually, that's a really good thought. So yeah, I'd like that for the first kind of, you're taking people through a buying journey. You are educating them on a problem that exists. You're building in considerations for that, how they can solve that problem. Then hopefully you're getting them to evaluate your solution as a provider of, or a solver of that pain. So if you're designing your emails with that flow in mind, that's cool.
Yeah. And then the follow-up obviously offers more perspective. But Kyle, I appreciate you giving some feedback. I appreciate you giving a masterclass on how to design an SDR, really like a boot camp on how to start your career. If folks want to connect with you, where should I send them? Where should they be going?
LinkedIn is the only place I'm really active. So LinkedIn is the answer. I will not ever be on TikTok. I know, I'm sorry. It's just not my style.
I love that. Okay. Everyone go check out Kyle Coleman on LinkedIn. Thanks again for giving the time, Kyle.
Always a pleasure, Will. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.